it's a little hot in there. I'm just practicing wearing my space burqa. Kidding around. Hey, folks, welcome back to The Source. You know, what? Is there something unusual going on? This is Hard News Straight Talk, people. We're talking about NASA. Joining me today live from Ottawa is John Robson. John, how you doing?
Привет, товарищ.
Ah, как дела? We're speaking a little Russian. That's actually what this whole shtick is about. John, can you believe it that NASA, which was part of the giant space race against the Soviets, the race against the Reds, now NASA is requiring American astronauts to study Russian?
Yeah, I'm reminded of a line from A Funny Thing Happened on the way to the forum. There's no way to make it sound like an accomplishment. You know, you could make all kinds of excuses. Well, it's practical, it's safety. But no matter what you say, English was the language of space. And now the fact is the Americans are out of that rocket go whoosh into out of the atmosphere business. And they have to learn Russian in order to talk to the people on whom they now depend for their ride.
Now, who made this decision? I mean, it used to be that, like you say, English was the language of space, and anyone other than the Russians who went into space had to learn English. If you were an Indian astronaut, an Israeli astronaut, a French astronaut, you're speaking English. Why the change? Give me the political decision.
Well, you know what they say, that success is 1,000 fathers and failure is an orphan. But really, you have to say it's Barack Obama, because he canceled the successor program to the shuttle. And this is a logical consequence of doing that. And you figure, if you were going up in a Soyuz rocket, you'd want to be able to read the controls and know what the guys were saying. If an emergency arose, yeah, you'd want to be able to communicate with the guy who's driving. So you could see where the practical desirability arises once you've made this decision that we will no longer be able to put men in space. There's, it seems to me, the decision on which all of this hinges.
You know, it's incredible. I mean, the international language of aviation is English. If you're landing in Timbuktu, if you're landing in China, they all speak English. And this is an incredible, it's not just, I don't even think it's necessary, by the way. I don't think that American astronauts really do need to learn Russian to hitch a ride with the Russians. I think it's the Russians just turning the screws and saying, ha, we hold all the cards now since you, Barack Obama, canceled your space shuttle and we're the only game in town. We're going to make you speak Russian just to make you dance. What do you think of that, John?
Well, I noticed that they raised the ticket price as well, which suggests that they figure they've got the whip hand. On the other hand, because I know that some Russian agency said, oh, well, now we're in the Soyuz era of space travel, the age of reliability. And I thought to myself, if I was on the deep space successor to Aeroflot, I think I really would want to be able to read the emergency instructions. But, you know, it's just, you could always rationalize these things. No, the empire's not in decline. It's just a temporary measure. It's fine. We'll get by. It's just being practical here. But enough of these things add up, and it's clear that you've lost your will to be number one. Now, I'm not writing off America yet, but I'm saying letting this kind of thing happen and not being bothered by it.
Yeah.
If too much of that accumulates, you simply slide into mediocrity with a whole pile of rationalizations in tow.
You know, in Mark Stein's new book, After America, he says that he doubts that the United States could even put a man on the moon today, even if they tried. They just lack the industrial and political and decision-making will. Now it's all studies and impact studies and environmental studies and lawyers. Just the greatest moment of American achievement was probably 40 years ago. And I'm worried that that's becoming a prophecy that Obama is fulfilling.
Yeah, I mean, and with the greatest respect to Mark Stein, I think sometimes he does get just a tad gloomy. You know, remember that the Americans did put pieces of metal from the World Trade Center on Mars, which I said, I'd like to see the jihadis do that. But the problem is a slow kind of accumulated decline. Remember, for a very long time, if Rome wanted to rouse itself, it could do almost anything. But it increasingly lost the will to rouse itself, and the rot got worse and worse, it got harder and harder. And so the thing to me, if the Americans for some reason had to get a man on the moon, they realized it left an important piece of luggage there and they needed it back, I think they could get someone there in a remarkably short time. The problem is this gradual erosion of the will to do so. And, you know, I'm encouraged by some signs in American politics and American culture. You don't write the United States off too early. But you do have to stop electing people like Barack Obama and thinking he's cool if you want to reverse the apparent decline.
John Robson, I'm very depressed by it. I mean, you know, it used to be a time when, you know, Canadian and American kids would grow up saying, when I grow up, I want to be an astronaut. It's sort of weird. It's not a great American dream anymore. It's a great Russian dream, great Chinese dream. And if you're American, well, you know, maybe the Soviets or the Russians will let you hitch a ride. I appreciate you talking, my friend. And
okay,
thanks
and
for being.
I appreciate you taking the helmet off, because remember, in space, no one can hear you rant.
That's right. You know, this is our going to be for sure our nomination for a Gemini for Hard News Straight Talk, my friend. Thanks for joining us today.
My pleasure.